Have a tough wide receiver start sit decision or looking for a streamer for week 6, we've got you covered.
And make sure you stick around to the end when we tell you which wide receivers are going to win your week and which ones are going to break your heart.
That's right. Talk about heartbreak. Dak Prescott injury, man. I mean, it was brutal to watch, just not even from a fantasy, forget fantasy. Even if you're not a Cowboys fan, even if you're a Washington football team fan, as my man Chris is. I mean, if you just like football in general, it doesn't matter. Watching the injury was just tough, man. And, obviously thoughts go out to him. I think he's doing fine now, but it's going to affect the entire outlook for that offense. So talk about the receiving core. That's obviously number one. We got Andy Dalton at quarterback. That's not a huge drop off, but Chris, I've got to think that does something right for this offense. I was clicking at a historic pace, really, for passing yards, and now all of a sudden going to a backup quarterback. So what's the reaction? I know you broke this down, of course, in a whole separate video, guys. If you haven't watched that, you might want to check out instant reaction. But what's the quick overview as far as Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb? What do we expect from them in week 6?
Yeah, good question. I guess that's a great unknown because we can only go off a really small sample size here of what we saw from Andy Dalton last week. Now, on the plus side, Andy Dalton is without a doubt the best backup QB in the NFL. I think everybody agrees with that. This guy was a starter for Cincinnati for many years, had success. We've seen him support, AJ Green as a wide receiver 1. We've seen him support Tyler Boyd as a high-end wide receiver 2. We know he can support wide receivers. And this is without a doubt the best group of wide receivers he's ever had in his career, right? They are stacked with 3 great wide receivers. Now, it's not going to be as good as it was with Dak Prescott. Obviously, Dak Prescott, one of the best QBs in the NFL. When we look at these 3 guys, I like them all, honestly. I still think, I know a lot of people are worried about Cooper. If you look at Dalton last week, he had 11. He attempted 11 passes, 3 to Cooper, 3 to Lamb, 3 to Gallup, and then 2 to Tony Pollard, the running back. Well, the backup running back. But anyways, I think with a full week of practice, Cooper is still going to be the guy. Again, we've seen Andy Dalton support a wide receiver 1 with AJ Green. Cooper is an elite wide receiver. I think he's going to be Andy Dalton's guy. I think you feel confident with Amari Cooper. And this matchup against Arizona is not a matchup to be scared of for any of these guys, so you don't have to worry about that. When looking at Gallup and Lamb, this is where it gets tricky because coming into the season, you either thought Gallup was still going to be the number 2 and Lamb was going to take time, or you thought the other way around. It's been mostly Lamb with Gallup just having a big game, a big catch here or there, a big game here or there. I think this is actually good for Gallup again because we saw Andy Dalton chuck it deep to Gallup a few times at the end of the game. I mean, that he had 2 amazing catches on that final drive when they tied the game up, right? So I think Dalton will target Gallup more than Dak Prescott was. So, but again, Gallup comes with that risk. He comes with that upside, but he comes with that risk. But I do like him a little more going forward. Lamb, I think, is fine. Maybe he takes a slight hit with Dalton just because I'm not sure if Dalton's gonna be looking his way as much. But again, this is a great unknown. I think you can feel okay about all 3 of these guys this week. Obviously, I feel fine with Cooper. Gallup has that enormous upside, which I think Dalton will help bring back out. Lamb, relatively safe. So that's pretty much how I feel about it. Obviously, we'll know more after the game when we get to see how he really targeted these guys. But going into the game, that's my feeling for this week.
Yeah, and realistically, I mean, if you have any of these 3 receivers, you probably just still start them every week because there's no reason not to. This is still a great offense, right? And Dalton, like you said, probably the best backup quarterback in the league. Hate to give Jerry Jones any credit, but it looked like a really smart deal then, a really good move to get him in the offseason. But it's interesting that I think the initial concern, talk about people panicking, right? And I know you broke this down too. People panicked about Amari Cooper. All of a sudden, he's going to drop in value because no Dak. On paper, actually, this week against Arizona, he has the best matchup. If you follow Pro Football Focus, right, PFF, talk about their wide receiver cornerback matchups, he has the best. And he's going against Patrick Peterson, which it used to be like, that's it. Shut him down. No go, right? You want to fade those guys. it's not the same Patrick Peterson, right? He's grading out right now at 45.6. He's just not the same. It's been terrible. Nothing to worry about. So I actually still would have Cooper as the top guy out of that group. And then probably followed by Lamb. I think he's kind of taken over as the second target there. And then Gallup, I mean, they're just having room go routes, right? He's the deep threat. He'll boom or he'll bust pretty much. But there's enough boom potential that you don't want to sit him, especially in a good matchup. So I say start all three. And, I don't think there's really too much reason to worry. Now, you might want to be worried a little bit about JuJu, right? Because there's a guy named Chase Claypool, might have heard of what he did last week, scored 4 touchdowns, almost had a fifth. Ridiculous week. I know here come all the naysayers say, well, that was because Deontay Johnson was out. Well, here's the thing. Deontay Johnson has been out since week 2, right? And I think that Claypool has pretty much carved himself a really solid role. JuJu, I don't know what to make of the fact that he's just not the number one guy there anymore, because Deontay Johnson was putting up more targets than he was the first couple of weeks, and now Claypool. So, I mean, what's going on with JuJu? And do you even consider him close to the wide receiver 1 group anymore?
JuJu makes no sense to me because everything we hoped is happening. Because Deontay Johnson and James Washington and Chase Claypool, he's gotten to play the majority of his snaps out of the slot, like he did his first 2 years when Antonio Brown was there, when he was going crazy. Big Ben is healthy. But not only that, Big Ben's average depth of target this year is 27th of all QBs. So it's not like he's chucking it down the field. So, like, everything, if I had told you before the season that JuJu would be playing primarily out of the slot, Big Ben would be healthy, and he'd only be throwing the ball an average of 7 yards, you'd be like, oh, JuJu's going to have 1,000 catches, and he's going to just destroy the season. And it hasn't been that way, which is crazy. But so can you consider him the wide receiver 1? Maybe not, but I think this week you have to play JuJu. It's Cleveland. And I don't know if I feel like no one is talking about how bad they are against the pass. Cleveland is horrible against the pass, one of the worst defenses against the pass. I think you can feel fairly good about starting JuJu. Now, as far as Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool and even James Washington, here's the thing about Chase Claypool. Yeah, he had that monster game. And we know that is unlikely to be sustainable. Like, he's certainly not going to score 4 touchdowns again, because we know that's very unsustainable. So, yeah, JuJu, I mean, now obviously if Deontay Johnson is out, then I feel much better about Chase Claypool, because, again, this is a very, very good matchup. I feel like Pittsburgh is going to, like, Big Ben's going to have a big game. All the receivers are going to have a big game. It just really comes down to how healthy is Deontay Johnson as far as Chase Claypool goes, between these two guys. If Deontay Johnson gets in a full practice this week and looks healthy, I feel good about him. It would downgrade Chase Claypool a little bit for me. If Deontay Johnson's out again, obviously now I feel better about Chase Claypool as like a wide receiver 3 with upside, maybe even wide receiver 2 this week. And I also think James Washington has some sneaky value this week. Again, he led the team in target. He actually, maybe it was a target. Maybe it was routes. I'm sorry, instead of targets. But he led the team in routes last week. So opportunity for all these guys is basically what I'm saying. It just really comes down to Deontay Johnson. How healthy is he? Is he in the lineup? And is he going to actually play his normal amount of snaps?
Yeah, here's the weird thing, because it is on paper, it's a great matchup. I have Big Ben right now. I think it's my QB 6 or 7 on the week. I think he's going to have a huge game. I don't have any of these individual receivers in the top 20 because they're going to spread it around, which is what they've been doing. I mean, I think, like you said, all 4 of those guys almost equal target share. Now, obviously, if Johnson had been healthy, he might be leading the pack, but that's the whole point. He's never healthy. And it's not one thing, right, that kept him out a couple weeks, right? It wasn't like a concussion and, he missed 2 weeks because of that. It wasn't, something that kind of get re-aggravated, lingering. It's 3 different things, right? He's banged up all over the place. And it's interesting. And I keep bringing this up like every, video I do, but it means something. Watching Claypool go off, and they talked about how the offense coordinator, Randy Fichtner, they love Claypool's availability, which means the fact that he's always there in practice, he's getting reps. All right, JuJu misses every Wednesday, right? That's just a thing, right? He misses at least 1 practice a week when he's not banged up. Deontay Johnson has missed everything for the last couple of weeks. Claypool's there. He's getting fed. I think they're going to keep feeding him. I'm legit worried that Juju's going to kind of fall behind and maybe be the second, third option. And I also don't think people are talking about the fact that he's going to be a free agent. It's not guaranteed he's going to be a Steeler next year. I think they're really grooming Claypool to be their next guy. So I hate to overreact, right? I'm not a guy to overreact to a week, and we'll talk about this at our last wide receiver. But I think the Claypool target share is legit. No, he's not going to score 4 touchdowns each week. He could score a touchdown most weeks. Deontay Johnson, I need to see him actually healthy in a game before I put him back in my lineup, right? And then Juju, of course you have to play him, but I just don't see him getting back to that level this year because he's not the main guy anymore. So you have to start Deebo Samuel. I mean, I know everyone's waiting for him to come back, and he's back, and you probably saw you started him last week. I know it was a big, upset all across the board for San Francisco, but only caught 2 of 8 passes. And here's the thing: who's going to be quarterback this week? Is it going to be Garoppolo? Okay, maybe. Is that good? Because he didn't look very good, and that was against Miami. Okay, going against the Rams, that's a better defense. All right, especially that front line might get eaten alive by Aaron Donald. So, how do you feel about Deebo this week?
Man, Deebo's tough. On the plus side, he's getting the looks. 8 targets last week. On the downside, they're not really converting. And again, I mean, Garoppolo looked horrible last week. Maybe they just brought him back too soon. Maybe he wasn't 100%. Maybe it was just one of those weeks. And this is a tough matchup. This whole Rams secondary is playing lights out. Everybody's playing great in this secondary. So this is not a matchup where you can feel good about it. Can feel good about Deebo. It's hard for me to say bench Deebo, but I think you have to treat him more as like a wide receiver 3 this week. I don't know where you have him ranked, but that's probably how I'd be looking at him is more like a wide receiver 3. And I mean, he's always got a chance of taking an end around to the house or something like that, right? In this offense, they use him so many different ways. It's not just his pass catching. So he's always got a chance there, but yeah, I can't view him as more than a wide receiver 3 right now, especially in this matchup.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm kind of out on Deebo this week. He's a player too that I know both you and I agreed on way in the preseason. We talked about guys to avoid, and he was on that list, right? We don't have Deebo just because worried about the injury, whether he'd come back. He looks healthy, but the issues are elsewhere in this offense. The issue this week I have is that the Rams are allowing the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers in the league. So then you add on top of that the fact the whole quarterback situation is a mess. So I think you can probably keep him benched this week and then hope for better things in the future. All right, so I kind of teased this earlier. Talk about overreaction. Let's get to Travis Fulgham because I know a lot of you got on him. I mean, either you believe or you don't, right? You think that a guy who's a 6th-round pick who was cut by Detroit, who was not even on the radar. He wasn't near the radar in the preseason. The Eagles legit had like 8 receivers in front of him on the depth chart. Well, of course, Alshon Jeffrey hasn't played. Deshaun Jackson's been hurt. Rager's on IR, right? Arcega-Whiteside is he shows up once in a while, catches a pass, and then he disappears. Greg Ward, who else? Several receivers. So he comes up, and he has his monster game. Is there any chance he comes close to this again? Because if you watched my waiver wire article for our episode for wide receivers, you know my answer. I'm not playing him this week, and I didn't pick him up anywhere. But do you think there's hope for at least flex value against Baltimore?
No, not against Baltimore. This is one of the toughest matchups, one of the best defenses in the league, great secondary. I know they don't really have anybody else to throw to, but I don't think it's going to matter this week. I mean, could he score a touchdown again? Sure. Could he do something like that again? Sure. But the risk here is that he gets, no catches or 1 catch and just completely, destroys your week. So I just don't think like you said, overreaction. You can't go off of one monster week from out of the blue because, where's he been all season? It's not like the Eagles have had all these pass catchers all year. And then this week they had nobody else to throw to. Where's he been all season? So, and Pittsburgh, you think, oh, Pittsburgh, great defense. They've been horrible against the pass this year. They've been really, really bad against the pass. They're a great run defense. I know Miles Sanders broke off that long run, but other than that, he did nothing. They're not very good against the pass. Baltimore is very, very good against the pass. I don't really like any of the Eagles pass catchers this week. So I don't really like any of the Eagles skill position players this week, to be honest, against this defense. So no, not starting him any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think the best course of action probably the rest of the season is just don't play any Eagles other than Miles Sanders. And that'll probably steer you right. All right, so let's talk about who you should play. We always save for the end, save the best for last. Our boom and bust picks this time for wide receivers. So let's talk about it. Who do you think is going to go off in week 6?
Yeah, I got Odell Beckham is going to give you another monster week. This is kind of like who Odell is now. You play him in these great matchups and you worry about him in the other matchups. He's still been dominating the target share for the Browns. Landry, gets his little bit, but it's really Mayfield is throwing to Odell a lot. They just haven't been connecting, but we've seen in the good matchups when they do connect, Odell can go off, and I think that's what's going to happen this week. I talked about it. Pittsburgh, great against the run, terrible against the pass. I think Cleveland is going to have to attack them through the air at some point, and when they do, they'll have success, and Odell will be the biggest beneficiary of that. So play Odell with confidence this week.
Yeah, I was off of him last week. I think I had him as my bust, and he pretty much busted because it was a tough matchup. But I think you can get back on him because, like you said, Pittsburgh, tough in general defensively, but not so much in the secondary. They're vulnerable, at least. Dallas is very vulnerable in the secondary, so it goes without saying. You could probably stream receivers against them. Christian Kirk is a guy who's starting to come back into the offensive fold. A talented guy. He missed just 1 week, surprisingly, with a groin issue, and his targets are going back up and up. I think that this is a week that you could probably stream him because, again, they're going to pass the ball pretty easily against Dallas. So I like the matchup and I like his upside. Do not like another guy, but I'm gonna let you go first here. Who is your bust?
Yeah, Tyler Boyd. He busted last week. I think he's going to bust again. He busted last week in a tough matchup against Baltimore. Now he gets another tough matchup against the Colts. The Colts defense is they're like Baltimore. They're good all around. They are just probably one of the best defenses this year that we've seen. Tough matchup for them. I expect this to be a tough matchup for all the Bengals players, and Boyd's no exception. I can't view him more as like a wide receiver 3 this week. I think he just doesn't have the ceiling floor. He's an okay floor play, but no real ceiling this week. So if you have a better option, I'd look there.
I agree with that. I feel like we said this before in the running back show. Colts defense is no joke, right? So you got to look at the numbers, right? Even though he's a good player, it's not a good matchup. And likewise, DJ Moore has been a little disappointing. So finally last week, people said, there he is, right? That's what we were expecting. Well, sorry to let you down. He's going to go back to what he was, probably worse this week, because even though he did have a nice game fantasy-wise last week, a lot of it came on that big touchdown play. He only had 5 targets. Robbie Anderson is the wide receiver 1 in Carolina, and that was just too easy of a matchup. Of course he was going to eat. And you know what? This is the opposite. Going against the Bears, one of the toughest defenses against the wide receivers specifically, they're only allowing 7.43 yards per target. That's the second best, all right, among all defenses. So if you figure Moore is only getting a few targets, yeah, he might be due for another 40, 50-yard game. Chances are they won't be scoring a touchdown. So I'm off of Moore. I know it's hard to bench a player like that, but I do not expect much, if anything, from him. All right, hopefully that helped our wide receiver advice. If you have a question, hit us up with a comment here. Follow us at Endgame Fantasy. And of course, if you didn't do it already, hit subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Let us know what you think. All right, thanks for watching.